Hey. What's up? What's up? I'm here with Chase. What's up, Chase?
What's happening? Oh, there might have been an echo there for a second, but we fixed it. All right, what's up?
What's up? Woo! All right. So, Chase, tell me what we're doing here.
We're gonna do some street epistemology on old Chasey boy.
All right. And anything you want to tell the audience about yourself? Introduce yourself. Give yourself a shout
Oh
out.
well, let's see. I'm a activist for animal rights and human rights and the environment, and been doing that for many years now. And yeah, been vegan for 13 years. Just celebrated my vegan anniversary on January 1st. So, and happy new year to you and everybody. But yeah, so I was religious. I was raised religious. We'll get into that later on. But as you can see, I am an atheist. Debate me.
Won't be doing that today.
Yeah, we won't be doing that, but another time perhaps. But we'll SE me today.
All right. Sounds good. And what's the claim we're talking about today?
Well, we got the claim that the Christian God does not exist. I want to add a most likely, a little parentheses of most likely there, but you know.
I got you.
And this can't come at a better time than now, because earlier today I had to deal with a Christian person who was saying that gay marriage should be repealed and that gay people, it should be illegal for gay people to marry. So that upset me, just as a person who cares about justice, and also I'm bisexual, and so they kind of hit a little close. But anyway, we'll move on.
That's understandable.
I didn't get too upset with him. I didn't yell or nothing. You know me, I got that anger problem, but I was able to keep it pretty cordial while still holding my ground.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Not that you know what I mean.
I got
you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah.
All right. So, I guess with regards to this claim, what do we mean when we say? I guess what do you mean when you say the Christian God? What is that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, mostly it would be based off the Bible, I would think. You can't really have a Jesus character or this kind of God without, the Old and New Testament, the Bible. So that's pretty much what it's based on. I think, though, that there may be some, I think they might be Catholics or some Orthodox people who might value the church's teaching more than the Bible.
Okay.
And so, but I'm not well versed on that. So that's kind of not the Christianity that I'm talking about. I guess I could address that in here if we need to, but I'm talking pretty much but I feel like the more you stray away from the Bible, the more you're creating a different God, right? It seems like, unless the Christian church came before the Bible, which I've heard that might have been the case, like that the Catholic Church started and then, canonized and created the Bible. And so I'm not too sure about the historicity, but.
Well, I'm most interested in, I guess, what you think. So I guess for the purposes of this conversation, we can just focus on that.
Okay, so pretty much then, Christian God meaning the God of the Bible.
Okay, cool. Let's roll with that. And I guess you said most likely, so it sounds like you're not 100% confident.
Correct.
How confident would you say you are?
I'm feeling a 97. I had to think about it the other day, and I was like, yeah, maybe a 97. But
Okay.
we'll see. That number may change one way or the other.
Cool. Let's calibrate that a little bit. What does 97% mean?
Well, I think 100%, like we were saying, to me means certainty, as if like I know for a fact and I couldn't possibly be wrong. But I try to be a little open-minded to new evidence, new information, to the fact that I've been wrong thousands of times in my life, and this may be one of them. So I try not to ever go above 99% on anything, really. Maybe something or other, but for the, something like that I exist, like, because in order to be deceived or to have, false thoughts, I must first exist. I might put 100% on that, but maybe still just 99, because who knows. But 97 instead of a 99, I guess, is what we're looking at. So it's just because, yeah, maybe there's something out there that I'm missing. And it's a really heavy book. It's dense reading, the Bible, and I have not read the whole thing, but I've read a lot of it. I've read enough of it. Oh man, I read too much of it.
Okay. All right. I think I understand what you mean by 97%. It's kind of what I would have expected myself. How I would have defined 97%. So cool. We're on the same page there. And then I guess what has led you to this conclusion, to this confidence level?
Yeah, so several things, I have my personal story, which we could go into, but it's kind of multifaceted. It deals with me, like I was a Christian, and I read a lot of the Bible, and that convinced me to leave Christianity because I didn't like what I was seeing in the Bible, or at least a lot of it. Some of it's good. There's some good stuff in there, but a lot of really concerning verses about, well, I guess I should say this. So there's contradictions that got me, thinking skeptically about this book. There's moral atrocities, or what I consider to be a moral atrocity, that's promoted in the Bible. There's anti-scientific things like a talking donkey and a worldwide flood with no evidence. And, it's historically inaccurate in many ways. And it just seems like there's no sufficient evidence of this God existing. And it seems to me that the Bible is more likely just written by humans, just an old book written by humans. So I wanted to kind of spend a few minutes focusing on the contradictions to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. If now sounds like a good time for that.
Sure. Yeah. I guess is the contradictions the most, the biggest reason, the biggest piece of that pie chart that gets you to your 97%?
Well, it's hard to say because an overview of the reasons why would be that, yeah, there's contradictions, and the moral atrocities don't seem to fit with, with my value system. And other things like the problem of suffering, like I don't understand why, like most, like, I mean, there's so many like babies with cancer and stuff like this, where it's like, well, the baby didn't do anything, why do they have to suffer? I wouldn't create a world like that. So why did God create a world like this? It makes more sense that a God doesn't exist and didn't create a world like this if he's loving and powerful. So it seems like there's a better explanation for this problem. And like I had, like, me specifically leaving religion was mostly due to, like, after I had left Christianity because of the moral atrocities in the Bible and the contradictions in the Bible. I was still a theist for a few years, and I left that because I just couldn't reconcile the problem of suffering of, like, because, like I said, I had gone vegan and I started caring about the animals in my late 20s, and I started thinking, like, most baby animals born in the wild die as baby animals. They don't reach maturity because they get, eaten alive by predators, or they starve to death, or they freeze to death. And I just don't understand why a good and powerful God would create or allow a world that has so much extreme suffering for innocent individuals.
Okay.
But yeah, but I mean, maybe the God is evil, maybe a God exists and he's evil, or maybe the God wants to help but isn't all powerful. Maybe the God has good intentions but can't help as much as we'd like, but then that it doesn't really explain, like, the beauty and complexity of the universe. Like, if he's able to do that, you'd think he'd be able to prevent child cancer. But
Sure.
yeah.
What would your confidence be if, like, I guess the God of the Bible but he's evil. Would your confidence decrease? Would it be like more of a 50%, or where would we be sitting?
Well, I mean, that would maybe help in the moral aspects, because yeah, like I said, a god could exist and be evil, but that is problematic for the Bible because it mentions in many places that God is loving and
Hmm.
forgiving and merciful and patient and all this, and so it doesn't seem to add up. So there's still the contradiction aspect and the unscientific aspects, you know.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't want to focus on the science aspect because I'm not super great with science, but there's no evidence in the scientific community, or the consensus of a global flood at any time in the past,
Okay,
10,000 years or past that,
gotcha. Would the flood have to have occurred for the God of the Bible to exist?
Well, I mean, we could say maybe what happened was the whole rest of the Bible is true and accurate except for the flood story.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the case. But the problem is
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of other contradictions and unscientific things littered throughout that book. And so it's like you'd have to take
Okay.
out all of those pieces to make it a non-supernatural book, to make it a natural book that also then you have historicity problems.
Okay.
So
It, so it sounds
yeah,
like the two most important pieces here are the contradictions and the moral atrocities.
yeah,
Um, I think we'll probably have time to talk about both. I guess which would you like to talk about first?
cool. Yeah, we'll probably start with the contradictions and I can
Okay.
spend a few minutes on that if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I guess if you want to explain, what a contradiction is, maybe give an example, and we'll go from there.
Well, I guess a logical contradiction in philosophy would be um, a proposition and its negation in conjunction, I think. So uh, that means like A and not A, like a thing is and is not. Like the sun will rise, the sun will not rise. Those are contradictions. Um, I am talking to you and I am not talking to you at the same time. These are contradictions. Um,
Gotcha.
so specific contradictions in the Bible are as such, and this is not the full list. This is just a few, but here we go. So in 1 John 4:8, the Bible says that God is love, and in 1 Corinthians 13:4, it says love is kind. But how is it loving or kind for this God to command people to kill infants in 1 Samuel 15:3 and Numbers 31:17? How is it loving or kind for this God to tell people it's okay to own slaves for their whole lives in Leviticus 25:44 through 46, and that people could beat their slaves in Exodus 21:20 through 21? How is it loving or kind to say gay people should be executed in Leviticus 20:13, and that good people burn in hell for eternity simply for not believing this book? So here's a question of, does God change his mind? So in Malachi 3:6, it says, I, the Lord, do not change. Okay. And in 1 Samuel 15:29, it says, the glory of Israel will not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should lie or change his mind. Okay. But then in Exodus 32:14, it said, so the Lord changed his mind about this. And then it says the same thing in Amos 7:3, that the Lord changed his mind. So I'm left wondering, does God change his mind or not? In 1 Kings 4:26, it's written that Solomon had 40,000 stalls for his chariot horses, versus 2 Chronicles 9:25, where Solomon is reported to have only 4,000 stalls for his chariot horses. 40,000 versus 4,000. I don't know which it is. Mark 5:1 through 20, it reports that it's one man possessed by the devil, and Matthew 8:28 through 34, which describes two men being possessed. And then there's the question of who was Joseph's father. In Matthew 1:16, Jacob was the father of Joseph, versus Luke 3:23, Joseph was the son of Heli. Now, who incited David to count the fighting men of Israel, God or Satan? In 2 Samuel 24:1, it says, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved against David against them, saying, go and number Israel and Judah. So it was the Lord that said that. But in 1 Chronicles 21:1, it says that Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. So that's a pretty big discrepancy. Is it Satan or God? Next, we've got John 1:18. No man hath ever seen God at any time, versus Genesis 32:30, where Jacob says, I have seen God face to face. And then we have Leviticus 24:19 through 22, where it says, if anyone injures his neighbor, whatever he has done must be done to him. Fracture for a fracture, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I am the Lord your God. Versus Matthew 5:38 through 39, where Jesus says, you have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. Let's see. Yeah, and then Jesus says, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other cheek also. Yeah. Next is Romans 10:13. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Versus Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Now we got Luke 23:32 through 43. The crucifixion of Jesus. So one man is on the cross next to Jesus and insulting him, and the other man is on the cross praising Jesus and asks for forgiveness and tells the other guy on the cross to stop insulting Jesus. That's in Luke. But in Mark and Matthew, specifically Mark 15:27 through 32 and Matthew 27:38 through 44, both men on the crosses insult Jesus, and no one asks for forgiveness. And what were Jesus's last words? Matthew 27:46 through 50, Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" before yielding up his spirit. Versus Luke 23:46, Jesus says, Father, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. I commit my spirit, and then dies. Versus John 19:30, where Jesus says, it is finished, and then bows his head and gives up his spirit. So this is just a very unreliable account of events that are transpiring. Almost done here. How many women visited Jesus's tomb and found it empty? According to Matthew 28:1, this account mentions Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary, the mother of James, visiting the tomb. So Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus. And then in Mark 16:1, it says it has the same two Marys mentioned again, along with Salome. Versus Luke 24:10, this version includes Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, not Salome, but Joanna, and then other unnamed women. And then in John 20, verse 1, this account mentions only Mary Magdalene. And it's a pretty big story, like of them finding the missing body. This is like supposed to be evidence. These are supposed to be like eyewitness testimonies that people rely on to be true about what happened to Jesus before and after he died, as a measure for their salvation, right? So Matthew 28, how many angels were at the tomb, right? So Matthew 28:2 describes only a single angel, versus Mark 16:5 mentions a young man interpreted by many as an angel. Luke 24:4 refers to two men, often were interpreted as angels. And John 20 verse 12 speaks of two angels. So is it one angel, two men, two angels? What's going on? And then almost done here. This is the last one. Is God all-knowing or not? So in 1 John 3:20, it says God knows everything. But in Genesis 18:20 through 21, it says, then the Lord said, The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. So it's like he's got like people sending him messages, that the outcry that reached him, like he's not there, he's not all present, all knowing. So yeah, so but like I said, in addition to those contradictions, there's still the problem of suffering, there's still the moral atrocities, and there's still, for me, just the idea that naturalism and secularism makes more sense and has fewer problems.
Okay. So I'll write that down. Okay, fantastic. All right, so I heard all the contradictions, and that was quite the extensive list. I'm sure you could come up with possibly even more.
Yeah.
But so one conclusion that someone could come out with is that these contradictions exist. Therefore, because these contradictions exist in the Bible, the God of the Bible does not exist. And it sounds like that's kind of the conclusion that you have come to, or at least this is part of that pie chart, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah.
Are there any alternative explanations that could explain these contradictions?
Well, like we were saying earlier, maybe it's possible that all of these contradictions and the many other contradictions, like if I made a full list of all the contradictions that, or what seem to be contradictions, if for one, all of those contradictions could be explained to me in a way that made sense, to where it's like, oh, it's not a contradiction, it's just my bad interpretation or whatever, then that would lower my confidence. Or if or if those, were you asking like if those coincidences weren't, or if those contradictions weren't there at all, or I was convinced that they were no longer contradictions? I mean,
That would kind of be my next question. I guess I was just asking, like, could there be another explanation to why these contradictions exist other than the conclusion of there not being a God exists? Not
being the Christian God. Yeah. I mean, it could be that wherever there's a contradiction, between two or more verses, we'll just say two verses for now, that one of those verses is real. Who the hell knows which one? But one of them is real, and the other one was just a man-made, addition that got snuck into God's word. But that makes it so that it's like, well, we have to do this serious dissection of which parts are God's word and which are not, and how do you know? And there's so many parts like that, so many contradictions that would have to be sorted out or explained away, that by the time you're done with it, you're left with 5 pages in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a joke, but like it'd be just a thinning of the book, that I don't know what that God would look like at that point. I don't know if it would be the evil God, like, that drowns babies and says to kill gay people, or if it would be the nicer God that says, don't throw stones at sinners, for you too are a sinner, and says, blessed are the merciful. Okay. It's just, I'm left in the dark, because you would think that if a God was going to try to communicate with us through a book of all things, like, you'd think you'd have a better way than a book, especially one written 2,000 years ago that's been translated hundreds of times or whatever. But you would think that he'd be able to protect that book from corruption, protect it with his almighty power from being corrupted by the hands of man, writing in additional verses, because now we're just left in this state of confusion.
Okay. Let's try to think of a hypothetically here.
Okay.
Let's say that you read the Bible and you go through it, and you've somehow determined that you were able to figure out the which verses are the correct version, I guess, which ones are true with the ones that contradict, right? And let's say you read through it and you come to the conclusion that the true ones are the good guy, God, the real nice guy, you know, the one that's loving, etc. You know, if you came to that conclusion, what would that do to your confidence? Would you still be at 97%?
It would decrease my confidence because it would have like, I guess, so you're talking about the contradictions being gone, or and the conclusion is that the God fits my morals basically, and is all the good parts of the Bible. So there'd be no hell, like there'd be no persecution of the gays, no subjugation of women, no slavery, etc. um um but there'd still be the problems of it being highly unscientific. Like, just because a book is moral and um and doesn't have any contradictions in it doesn't mean that it's a divine book. There could be plenty of books written by humans that have good moral instructions and no contradictions, but that doesn't mean that it's written by a god, or that it demonstrates that a god exists in any way. So there still is the lack. Yeah, so there's still just the scientific problem, the anti-history problem. But if you could remove all those parts, or make it so that all those parts in the Bible are to be taken not literally but as metaphor or some kind of fiction for some storytelling device, even though they're written plainly as historical, like the donkey spoke, right? It's like, what? But like, if all that were to happen, then there would still be the problem of suffering. Why would this God create and allow a world with childhood cancer and all this? And probably maybe more problems as well, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so I think of what I'm hearing is, if you came to that conclusion, you might have difficulty coming to that conclusion just because of suffering that you observe. At least that's kind of what I think you were saying. Kind of like, you said there'd still be the problem of suffering, so you might not come to that conclusion that this God is good.
Or powerful. Like, if we start to take away,
right.
If we start to take
something's
away,
got to give.
Yeah, something's got to give. If he's not all powerful, if he's not all, then maybe he can be all good but not all powerful. Like, he can be all good but not all powerful,
Okay.
or he can be all powerful but he's not all good if he's letting all this terrible stuff happen. Like the last threads of my theistic belief was just hoping and believing that there were, on no evidence, but just taking it on faith, that this God, for which there is no evidence, that this God was allowing this suffering for some good reason, or that he wasn't able to stop it.
Okay.
But
is that possible?
I mean, maybe, yeah. Like, that's why I'm an agnostic atheist. Agnostic atheist meaning, like, I don't believe in any gods, but I'm not claiming to know that no gods exist, because maybe there's an evil god or a trickster god, who's making the world look like, oh, it was evolution, here's, and making it look like it was natural. But it's actually, that's just a trick by this evil god, maybe. Or maybe God is like a toddler. He's young and he doesn't have all the power, but he wants to help. Maybe he's a nice little kid, but he wants to help get rid of childhood cancer, but he's not able to. It was just part of the way that, the world came out when he made it. It was an accident. But there's just no evidence for that either. So I'm not going to believe that, until there's good reason to.
Okay. Gotcha. So it sounds like if the contradictions, if the moral atrocities, if those pieces that kind of got you to that 97%, if those were resolved, then you'd still wouldn't necessarily have a degree of confidence that this God of the Bible exists. You'd have more of a lack of belief at that point. So you probably wouldn't be confident either way. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think I would still have, I might be more, I would lose confidence to some degree, but I'd probably still be over the 50% threshold, like somewhere, because like I wouldn't be totally, I think I would still, I mean, to some degree, I'm still agnostic because I'm not fully 100%, you know. So I consider myself agnostic on this claim, even though it's a positive claim that the God does not exist, because I am tying in the most likely, which is my 3%. You know, the God does not exist, most likely. That the Christian God does not exist, most likely, and that's my little 3% because I'm at 97%. So, but but if I lost the if I was appeased of the contradictions and moral atrocities problem, that wouldn't put me at the 50%. I might be at like 70 or 80 or something, because there's still the issue of the unscientific claims and the anti-historical claims that go against, you know, what most scientists and historians are saying. And also, like, the Christian God, like, that relies so much on supernatural, like unscientifically verifiable, like, claims such as Jesus rising from the dead in order to pay for our sins, to, you know, to save us and stuff. Like, without a man rising from the dead, which is a supernatural thing, which seems anti-scientific, then you can't have it be the Christian God, it would seem. I don't know
If
what
that was scientific, I don't know how it could be, but let's say people rose from their deathbeds occasionally.
after 3
You know,
days. After
after
3
3
days,
days.
like, because the Bible, the way the story is written, it's not like he, you know, he died for a minute and somebody resuscitated him. You know, it's not like a medical resuscitation. It's like homie was
Mm-hmm.
dead for 3 days
Yep.
and rotting and stuff, or, you know, starting to rot, you know, or you would think, and then he got up, you know, so, and was all fine, and then rose
Yeah.
to heaven. So it's like,
Yeah, that seems relatively special. A special occurrence.
yeah. So I guess, like, so
Yeah.
if, well, I don't know what kind of questions in your head right
I
now.
guess if that occurrence wasn't so special, if that happened occasionally, you know,
Yeah.
and then, you know, some of the other historical things, like you were convinced that the worldwide flood was totally possible. Like, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I
that.
guess if all the reasons I'm giving were gone, then I wouldn't be so strong in my claim. I might
Okay.
go all the way to agnostic, or um maybe even believing at some point, if all those problems were gone, including the problem of suffering, like, if that somehow was figured out or done away with, you know what I mean? Like, then I might, you know, there might still be reasons to not fully believe, or to not believe at all, but to be agnostic, to be more agnostic, you know, or there might
Yeah,
be additional reasons that I haven't thought about that would be reasons to not believe that the Christian God exists.
I like this question right here that Sasha just asked. Can the Christian Bible be wrong, mistranslated, editions, whatever, but the Christian God be real?
Yeah, I kind of answered that earlier. Was that an old question? Because he might have
Maybe.
already.
Well, he actually just did comment it like a minute
Okay.
ago.
Okay. So I think it was basically, or do you remember what I had said about that? I can try
I think you
to.
said that it would be a different God. Maybe is that what you said?
Yeah, it seems like it wouldn't, you know, because there's so many parts of the Bible that would be, you know, additions or mistranslations, that it becomes an unreliable text, and you don't know which verse to trust, or if any to trust, you know. And it makes it clear that this was written by dudes and not some all-powerful divine hand.
What would it take to? I mean, I guess we discussed kind of if if we remove this part, if we remove this part, blah blah blah. But is there anything that you could view yourself learning that hypothetically you could learn that could change your confidence either way?
um I mean, yeah, it's possible, like, if if a professional, apologist or theologian or somebody who went to seminary school or something can go, or, just anybody who knows the material well enough and could do a good job explaining it, if they can explain away these contradictions.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wait, was that your question?
Yeah, yeah, kinda. But I guess
Or
is
or or if
there?
or if God himself came down and showed, what I mean, like showed me some revelation of how yes, the book was miswritten in parts, but here's the real elements, and here's me and here's what I represent. It's all good, and here's an explanation of the problem of suffering, like, you know.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you had like this experience in which you maybe visually and audioly you
It would
heard
help.
you heard this God, okay, that would
I
help.
think it would help, but I also might be hallucinating, or I might be,
Mm,
have taken some kind of like food poisoning, or aliens are the ones tricking me, and it's not God
mm,
telling me the
mhm.
truth. It's aliens messing with me or something, or I've got psychosis or schizophrenia all of a sudden, Um, but it's still possible that it's the real God. And so, and before in my life, when I felt like God was talking to me, I did lean towards believing that it was this God talking to me. So that might happen again, but I feel like I'm more of a critical thinker now, and more skeptical. I have a higher standard of evidence, because like I said, it could still be any number of other explanations, even if it was some kind of powerful experience. Because I could just be looking at it the wrong way, fallacious reasoning. But other things that could help would be like if a consensus among historians came out that no, the Christian God is real, or if you take out these verses and these verses and these verses, but you keep these ones, then yeah, that Christian God is real. Then I'd be like, oh shit, or and same with the scientists, if they were to say, like, I mean, if we were to, like basically undo all the science that we know about, then yeah, I guess the Christian God could exist.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like, so you have this standard of evidence, and it sounds like an experience, whether that be visual with your ears, inside your head, whatever. That might not meet that standard. Is
It might
there
help.
anything that would meet that standard?
I'm not sure, like there's stuff that could get me to a high level of confidence that the Christian, well, I don't know. It's hard to say that the Christian God, like, there, I could imagine things that could increase my confidence to the point where I even believe in a God. I could imagine things happening that would result in me believing in a God. It's it's harder for it to be the Christian God or the Islamic God or something, because of the contradictions and the moral atrocities and all this, while claiming to be a loving God, right? So, um, I'm getting a little lost.
Okay. We can take a step back. We can, maybe, do you want to talk about the moral atrocities and suffering for a moment?
Okay.
Okay, cool. So I guess one of the things that you brought up was like childhood cancer. And yeah, that does suck. I think that sucks, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess, could there be a good thing about death?
Well,
Could
yeah,
death
like,
be good?
well, I mean, so it's not just death, it's the prolonged suffering before the
Long
death as
suffering?
well, so,
Okay.
because if it were just death, you could say, oh, well, they go straight shot up to heaven because they're a kid, but also there's a bunch of people with cancer that go to hell, apparently. So, like, that's messed
Mm,
up. Like, to give them cancer, then make them go to hell. But like, uh, so there's the prolonged suffering of a slow terminal illness and then death. And there's no evidence that there is an afterlife as a reward or like some way of making it up to them. And even if there was like making it up to them, like, you don't have to give them cancer in the first place, but like, I mean, like, you can say that, like, good things. I don't mean you, I mean the general you. We can say things like, some good things can come from bad things, like through some adversity comes strength sometimes, but not always. Like a lot of times people just like, aren't able to handle all this sadness, and so they don't learn any great life lesson about perseverance or whatever. When their kid slowly dies of cancer, they kill themselves afterwards because the sorrow is so much, or it doesn't bring them, or if they don't kill themselves, they don't become believers in God. You know what I mean? Some of them do, sure, but like a lot of people, it doesn't help them grow in any way that they couldn't have grown in other ways. Like we can grow without our babies getting cancer. Okay, like if like I could imagine that maybe like if I was designing a world that maybe a stubbed toe every now and then was necessary for some greater good, for some character building, but the
You
amount
take a
of,
break.
yeah, it's just the amount of suffering is so bad, and so many individuals, and it just seems so needless.
I feel that. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to end the stream?
No, we're good.
Okay.
We can keep going. Give me
All right.
10 seconds though, just 10 seconds to wipe my eyes.
Yep. Well, while we're waiting, if you guys wanna, put some hearts in the chat for Chase, maybe he'd appreciate that. Hey, Sasha.
Okie dokie.
Sasha's ahead of you guys.
Thank you, Sasha. Okay, so what's up now? What you got for me? Moral atrocities? Problem suffering. Let's do it.
Yeah, we it's some deep stuff. Man, where do you go from there?
Well, yeah, so just to summarize that part again, like so some good can come from suffering sometimes, but it doesn't always. And the suffering doesn't need to be so extreme for us to learn these lessons. And also there's like I said, like so many baby animals in the wild suffering in the cold and getting eaten up, eaten alive. Can you imagine being eaten alive? And like, yes, it just doesn't have to be to that extreme. And what did they do? They didn't do nothing, and we're not learning. Apparently, for thousands of years, this suffering to the baby animals in the wild has been happening. No humans have learned a lesson. Even to this day, it seems only the vegans seem to care. You know what I mean? Like,
I gotcha. If you were to step into the shoes of this God and create the world from scratch, what would the world look like?
There'd be free weed for everybody. If you want it, you don't have to.
Just growing on like every street corner?
Yeah, you just pick it as your
every bus stop.
Yeah. I could go all day about that, but I would start with like, no extreme suffering for anybody really, but especially the innocent young ones,
Okay.
Like, I mean, the scumbags like you and me, we deserve it, but no, I don't even think I wouldn't wish this shit on the worst enemy, man, because I'm not sure that I believe in free will, so like I think people are just in these circumstances doing these terrible things because like they just can't see the other way, and so that motivates me to try to have some empathy and some compassion for even people who I view as my enemies. That doesn't mean I'm not going to try and stop them from doing what they're doing, but I would, if I had godlike powers, I would stop them without giving them cancer. I surely wouldn't give their babies cancer just because they screwed me over, which seems to be the story of the Bible. It says Adam and Eve ate a fruit, and so, you know, and there's another contradiction in the Bible. It's like there's a part in Deuteronomy that says children shall not be put to death for the sins of their parents. But then that's the whole story of Adam and Eve, is that every generation after that has to suffer for their one action, which wasn't even that bad. They just wanted knowledge, you know. They were just curious. They didn't even exist. They're fictional characters.
There's definitely a lot of bad stuff in the world that we share. If there was something that we could do to make the world a better place for everyone, that anyone could do, what would that be?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Just become an activist. Like, not everybody has to donate as much of their time as I do. You know, I do this all day, every day, for humans and animals and the environment. I would just recommend that people get educated about different issues and get educated about different issues and put yourself into a situation where it's uncomfortable, because you have to see some cruelty in order to get affected enough to care. Because otherwise we live in denial, or we just put it onto the back burner and we think about ourselves too much. And we need to start thinking about others. Yeah. So go vegan.
Yeah. Go vegan. I like it. I like it.
Cool. Any other questions, buddy?
Well, we could do Alan the Alien if you're up for it, but I'm not gonna.
Sure, let's do it.
On it. Okay. All right, we got Alan the Alien. He doesn't know anything about Earth. He's an alien, you know. Never been here. Doesn't know anything about us. Doesn't know anything about Chase. Doesn't know anything about Pierce. Doesn't know anything about anybody. He comes down, lands his spaceship right back on your beach back there, and he wants to know if the God of the Bible is real, or if he's just fictional, right? What's the best way that Alan can figure that out?
Well, Alan, my friend, I would tell you, do some research on, start by, well, I mean, first, what I'd recommend is that he follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because there's going to be some resources for you there. Yeah, you know, like, just do a Google search, or look up on ChatGPT some contradictions in the Bible. And then, you know, when it gives you a list of contradictions, verify that that's true. You know, don't just take it on face value, but go ahead and look up the Bible verse. You know, you can go to Bible Gateway, is an internet site, and where you type in the Bible verse, and it'll give you all the different translations and everything, and you can see the verse before it and after it and the whole chapter, so that you can get the context and everything, to make sure you're not misinterpreting what the situation is. And yeah, and then also look up, you know, like, moral atrocities in the Bible. Do a search and you'll find a list of Bible verses, and then go look up those Bible verses. And if it don't make you feel good, then stand up against it, and see what historians are saying. You know, the consensus of experts in science and history about the claims made in the Bible. And and see what the atheist community has to say about, you know, objections to religious claims, and see what, you know, the scientists have to say. And that's a good place to start. Just learn logic and critical thinking.
Gotcha. All right. And I don't think I got much else for you. I do want to throw this comment up on the screen because I agree with it 100%. And I'm not 100% confident on anything, but I'm 100% confident in that.
Oh, thanks.
So. And I guess you got anything for me?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll just say I used to be a pretty bad guy. Like, I wasn't, you know, I used to be really selfish. I sometimes still am, and I have room for improvement. But I think that if we just, you know, I think people can improve, or at least some people, you know. So I hope that everybody will just believe in themselves and try to believe in others, because a lot of progress can be made. And but yeah, for you specifically, why you make me cry, Pierce? What's wrong with you? Ain't there enough suffering in the world? You gotta make your buddy cry.
Well, hopefully through the crying, I think you may have you know, maybe inspired some people, maybe. So maybe you inspired them, and maybe that there's good coming from the suffering in that sense.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. And do you want to share any thoughts that you have on how this went, or like or your thoughts on the issue? You don't have to. But as far as the conversation, like, I thought you did really well. I thought you asked great questions, and the rapport was really nice. I appreciate you giving me time to take a break and catch my breath and stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it went well. It was obviously really emotional for you, which I try not to have that happen, but of course I don't have total control over that. So I'm sorry that it did get emotional. That was not my goal, of course.
Yeah, I've got bipolar, you know, I got PTSD and all this stuff. So it ain't your fault.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad. I don't want to put you through any more distress than you need to go through. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll be fine right after this, you know.
Okay. Good. If you need to reach out to me, you do that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, how did you think the session went, though?
Yeah, I think it went pretty good. I guess, did you want to know my thoughts on kind of I guess you have your reasons here. Do you want to know my thoughts on that? Is that kind of what you were asking?
Or your thoughts on the issue, like whatever you want to share, like if you wanted to share you know, your percentage or anything like that, or if you agree with the claim, or if it's too strong of a claim, or but you don't have to share whatever you feel like it.
Sure. Like, I guess I don't like, do I think the God of the Bible exists? I don't know. How the heck am I supposed to know? That's kind of my thoughts. Like, I look at the contradictions, and I think, like, what does that mean? What's the best explanation for that? And I don't know. Does that mean that God doesn't exist? I don't know, man. Why are you asking me? You know, that's kind of my thoughts. Like, I don't put a lot of stock into that. When we look at the moral atrocities, yeah, a lot of them I think suck. Like, I don't think anybody should be throwing stones at it.
Yeah.
Why are you throwing stones at each other? That kind of sucks. Could there be some crazy reason, like somehow that's a good thing? Yes, sure, maybe, but it kind of sucks. So, I mean, does that mean that God doesn't exist? I don't know, man. But I know that we probably, if we love each other and we really care about each other, that's probably not the best way to show that love.
Yeah.
And that we care. Yeah. And then, you know, I guess we're talking about like science, the history of the flood, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, could it be allegory? I guess. I don't know. I guess that's one version, right? So like you said, there's all these different, you could have a totally different Bible depending on how you read it, I guess. Interpretation, what you think's allegory, what you think's fact. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. Well, that's kind of my thoughts. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of my thoughts on everything is like, you look at it and it's like, oh gosh, I don't know. What's the true version of Christianity? Could it be that one, that one, that one, that one? There's so many different denominations that it's hard to say, like, that's the one. Or maybe they're all wrong. I guess they can't all be right.
Yeah, that's why it just seems to me most likely that it was just written by dudes.
I see.
Most likely.
All right.
But I've been wrong before.
97%.
Well, yeah, should I stay at 97? I think I got to stay at 97 for now, but I'm open to new thoughts, and I'll keep thinking about it on my own.
And David just said, what if I told you God just told me to tell you both to send me $600? Well, I wouldn't believe you, but I'll tell you what, David. What everybody should do instead of sending you $600 should go to navigatingbeliefs.com and take the course on street epistemology and go follow Chase on every social media out there. I got his YouTube linked in the description, so you can also do that.
Cool. Thanks for that. Yeah. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can follow Pierce Watkins if you're not already following him. You probably are if you're watching his show right now. And you can follow Today David, who just commented. And who else? What other street epistemologists should we plug right now? There's Sushi Thinks.
Yeah, Sushi. We got
Mighty Conversations. Matt with Mighty Conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have we have the Discord channel as well.
Yep, Discord. And go ahead and download my book.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I downloaded Pierce's books, both of his books, kids' books, and gave them as a gift to my sister-in-law, who's a teacher of kids that age. So that's cool. And but yeah, y'all should join the Street Epistemology Discord channel if you want to have conversations with us.
All right, we're gonna call that a wrap then. We will. I'll see you guys next time.
Peace.